Good morning, everyone. My name is Katrina Salazar. I am the president of the California Board of Accountancy, and I would like to welcome everyone to our September 22nd, 2023 CBA meeting. As you may be aware, the CBA has provided the opportunity for the public to participate in this meeting via the WebEx platform. When taking public comments, we will begin by taking public comment from those individuals attending first at the physical Pomona meeting location. I will then ask the moderator to open up the lines for public comment. You will be allotted up to 5 minutes for public comment. I would also like to point out that we do have CBA member Lynn, who is participating via WebEx, and there are no members of the public at his location. With that, I would like to remind our members to be sure to turn on their microphone prior to speaking and to pull it close so that we can capture all of the comments. So with that, I would like to turn the meeting over to Ms. Reed to take roll.
Nancy Corrigan.
Corrigan, present.
Carrie Ann Farrell-Hines.
Carrie Ann Farrell-Hines, present.
Dan Jacobson.
Here.
Christian Lotta.
Present.
Tony Lynn.
Present.
Katrina Salazar.
Present.
Michael Savoy.
Michael Savoy, present.
And Evangeline Ward.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Reed. All right, so picking up with our agenda, we do start with item number 4, which is public comments for items not on the agenda. And we will start with the Pomona location where we are. Seeing no public comments for items not on the agenda, I would like to ask our WebEx moderator to please open up the online comments.
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen for your reference. Members of the public, if you would like to participate, click on the question mark inside of the square typically located bottom right corner of your WebEx screen and type the word comment in the text field and make sure it goes to all panelists before clicking that send button. If you are calling in, you can raise your virtual hand by pressing *3. At this time, I see no requests, or actually, yes, we do have a request. Let me set up my timer here for 5 minutes. Give us just a moment. Call in user 2. I'm going to send a request to unmute your microphone. You are unmuted. And call in user, I'll send the request again. You should get a verbal notification.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, I just wanted to call in to inquire about the backlog on the initial licensing applications. I've been dealing with quite some issues trying to get in contact with the actual office. I'm going on 6 weeks now with no reply to an email. I followed up 2 weeks ago, and I've tried calling all of the numbers listed on the CBA's website for all of the divisions, and they all lead back to the Department of Consumer Affairs. And they almost kind of laugh when I say I'm trying to get in touch because they say that I wasn't the first person to try. And each time they say the phones almost seem not to be working. And I was able to get connected to the voicemail, and voicemail messages are turned off. And so I'm just kind of wanting to bring that to attention that have not been able to get in touch with the office. And I was dealing with, at least in my case, a personal application issue. And I'd really just like to be able to talk to someone. So that's all I have to say, just trying to get the board to understand what's going on.
Thank you for that. Please hold one moment. Okay. All right. Well, and thank you so much for that public comment. This is Katrina Salazar. The board and the staff have heard your public comment. In order to respond, our board staff, we are requesting that you provide your first and last name so that they may follow up with you separately outside of this forum. Is that something you would be able to share?
Yes, my first name is Jake. My last name is Smalling, Smalling.
Please hold. Did we capture that? All right. Well, thank you very much for that comment. Moderator,
Thank you.
are there any additional public comments online?
This is the moderator. No additional requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. All right. That concludes the public comments for items not on the agenda and moves us along to the report of the president. We do have several items today, and we'll be taking our resolutions individually. So item 5A is the resolution for retiring Enforcement Advisory Committee member Mike Johnson, CPA. Mr. Johnson has served on the Enforcement Advisory Committee since September 14th, 2017, and his term will be ending on September 30th, 2023. May I get a motion to accept the resolution as presented? Ms. Hines? Okay, we do have a first. Mr. Jacobson?
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a first, we have a second for Mr. Jacobson. Any comment or discussion from our members? Seeing none, I will now open it up for public comment online. Oh, apologies. First, I will see if there's any public comment in Pomona. Seeing none, I would like to ask our WebEx moderator to please open up for public comment online.
Yes, this is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. The instructions will be on the screen shortly for you. If you are logged in and would like to participate, click the question mark inside of the square, type comment in the text field, send it to all panelists. If you're calling in, *3 to raise your virtual hand. And again, it's this agenda item that has been discussed. At this time, I see no request for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please close the comment. All right, so with that, we are ready to call for the vote. So I'd like to turn the meeting over to Ms. Reed.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Christian Lotta,
Yes.
Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes,
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
and Evangeline Ward.
Yes.
And the motion carries.
thank you very much for that. Moving along to the next agenda item is 5B, is the resolution for retiring Enforcement Advisory Committee member Jim Sanji, CPA. Mr. Sanji has served on the Enforcement Advisory Committee for the similar date terms, September 14th, 2017, and his term will end on September 30th of this year. May I have a motion to accept the resolution for Mr. Sanji? Mr. Jacobson?
I so move.
Right, and Mr. Savoy?
Second.
So we do have a first, we have a second. Is there any member comments? Seeing none, I'd like to invite public comment here in Pomona. Seeing none, I would like to invite our WebEx coordinator to please open up the online platform.
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen. If you would like to participate, click that question mark inside of the square, type comment, send it to all panelists. Or if you're calling in, *3 to raise your hand. No requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes, moderator, please close the Q&A. All right, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Ms. Reed for the vote.
Evangeline Ward,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes,
Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Christian Lotta,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, and Nancy Corrigan. And the motion carries.
thank you very much. Moving along to item C is the resolution for retiring Qualifications Committee member Brad Holsworth, CPA. Mr. Holsworth has served on the Qualifications Committee since September 14th, 2017, and his term will be ending on September 30th of this year. May I have a motion to accept the resolution for Mr. Holsworth? Ms. Hines? All right. Ms. Corrigan?
Second that motion.
Okay, so we have a first from Hines, a second from Corrigan. Any discussion of the board? All right, seeing none, I would like to invite public comment here in Pomona. And seeing none, I'd like to invite our WebEx moderator to please open up the online platform for public comment.
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. Instructions are on the screen. If you would like to participate, click the question mark, type comments, and to all panelists, if you're calling in, press *3 to raise your virtual hand. I see no requests. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. All right, with that, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Ms. Reed to please call for the vote.
Christian Lauda,
Yes.
Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Evangeline Ward,
Excuse me, yes.
Nancy Corrigan, Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, and Dan Jacobson.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you very much for that. So moving along to agenda item 5D is our annual agenda item related to officer elections for the Board of Accountancy. So just a reminder that at the November Board of Accountancy meeting, this board will elect a president, a vice president, and a secretary/treasurer. Each of these roles is service for a one-year term, and there is a requirement or a limitation that a member may not serve more than 2 consecutive terms in one of these roles. So there are materials about that opportunity or those opportunities in the handouts. It is available online as well. And our CBA members who wish to be considered for a leadership position are asked to submit a statement of qualifications to Ms. Rebecca Reed, who's our board relations analyst, by October 6th of 2023. And that deadline is going to allow plenty of time for us to prepare for the November meeting. So please put that on your to-do list to consider your potential leadership roles moving forward. Are there any questions? This is not a motion, no interest is needed, but are there just any questions here while we do have our board members gathered about that process? All right, seeing none, we then can move along. We will move along to item 5E, which is the California Society of CPAs report. And I would like to welcome Meredith Johnson, who is the 23-24 chair of the California Society of CPAs. And please take your time, but I'm very excited to welcome you here to present to our board to just share a little bit about a professional update, and would like to just start with asking you to share a little bit about yourself. And
This is the moderator. I'm not sure if anyone is speaking on your end. We can't hear anything here through WebEx.
Okay, there we go. All right, now the green light is on. We'll start again. And we were starting with thank yous and introductions. So my name is Meredith Johnson. I'm the 2023-2024 chair for the California Society of CPAs. And the Cal CPA, as I'm sure that you all know, is the largest state CPA society in the country. We represent around 40,000 members, everyone from students to licensed members to executives, retirees, educators, and everyone in between. And I actually am a tax partner at BPM, which is a California-based CPA firm headquartered in San Francisco. We have offices throughout the West Coast as well as in Las Vegas, and the vast majority of our employees are located here in California and licensed here in California. I became a CPA actually a little bit later in my career. So I'm very familiar with various parts of the Board of Accountancy website and the application process and the waiting on pins and needles to get all of those ducks in a row to get those three letters after my name. I actually started out working in finance, and in the wake of the 2008 recession, was looking for a way to reinvent my career, find something that had stability and had a lot of high esteem and public reputation. So when I was working in banking, I actually went to school at night through the community college route because my degree is not in anything related to accounting or business. It's in political science and Asian studies. So I needed to get all of those units in all of the right buckets to be able to sit for the exam. And I can tell you that I think that all of my coworkers thought I had this wonderful, fabulous life in the big city of San Francisco, but I was on a first name basis with everybody on the custodial staff in our building, because as soon as we would shut down for the day, I would open up my laptop and my books and be online trying to get through first all of the classes and then all of the exam materials. So when I hear about all of the different pathways that people are coming into the CPA profession, it's definitely near and dear to my heart to help them find a place where they can have a sustainable career that has a lot of opportunities to interact with the public and with the community, as well as giving back to their organizations and to their clients. I just wanted to thank you for all of your work here at the CBA with helping strengthen that public protection, as well as working collaboratively with Cal CPA, because we have so many of the same interests and obviously the same membership constituency as well. We're working quite a bit at looking at the different challenges and the different solutions that are available to move the profession forward and into, the next evolution of what it means to be a modern CPA. My platform as chair has a hashtag Stronger Together. And the idea there is that we're making sure that we're not only strengthening the partnerships that we have with other organizations, but we're also strengthening each other internally, collaborating, building on each other's expertise, looking at new areas of practice, looking at what are all of the ways in which the evolution of the CPA and the CPA career impacts communities, impacts people and their families, and then impacts, of course, the business community and public protection as a whole. And one of the key parts of that is actually working on the CPA pipeline. And the word pipeline is so interesting because it sort of suggests, when you think about it at first, just one pipeline. So if any of you are video game fans or have ever seen Super Mario Brothers, there's the big green pipe. Mario goes right down in there and he gets shot out to the next world. But we know that becoming a CPA doesn't look a lot like that. It looks a little bit more like a whole variety of on-ramps onto a freeway. You might come on at any point. We want to get people to the same destination. So when we think about how do we serve the next generation of CPAs and the next generation of potential CPAs, how do we get them to the right on-ramp to where they are today, to where they want to be in their career? We think it's really important to maintain a licensure framework that it balances the appropriate rigor along with that streamlined entry and makes it as easy as possible and as frictionless as possible for people who have met those qualifications to move through the exam and licensure process, as well as keep up those licenses. We think that that can really only be established through all of the coordinated efforts of stakeholders like yourselves and, of course, other leaders in the profession. I wanted to share some of the things that the Cal CPA is doing related to the pipeline. I can't tell you, this is the conversation at every meeting, right? We're an active and engaged participant in these discussions locally, as well as on the national level. And we do have a lot of ways that we shape the conversation, including being on the National Pipeline Task Force. And then as the largest state society, we have a lot of influence in terms of working with other societies that have larger amounts of resources to move that conversation forward. And one of those pieces is just the perception of the profession. So if you think about, what's the last accountant that you saw on TV or in a movie, they might have been the butt of every joke, whether they're Angela from The Office or Terry, who's literally a two-dimensional figure in the movie Soul. But we know that CPAs do a lot more and are a lot more than just that perception. And that's actually one of the reasons that we took the time and the effort to go through our rebranding campaign as Cal CPA. So on my laptop, I have this Cal CPA sticker, which is our new logo. It kind of represents the whole flavor of the sun, the sea, bringing a fresh perspective to what CPAs are doing today, kind of looking outside and embracing life outside the ledger. All those things that make us us are all the things that make us the first call when businesses have a crisis, and make us those trusted advisors to people throughout the community. And we also want to make sure that students know that CPAs are doing more than just putting numbers in Excel, and that what folks do early on in their CPA career looks a lot different than it did when you or I might have started in that career, and it'll continue to evolve. Looking at early pipeline support, that means making sure that other people are aware of the CPA profession. So I'm originally from Washington State, and I grew up in a small town. Not a lot of people went to college in that town. Most people went into the military. And I certainly didn't know anybody who worked in an office. So I definitely didn't know anybody who was a CPA. And it wasn't until meeting folks who were CPAs that I was able to make that decision for my career. We know there are a lot of schools, especially high school and even middle schools, that are under-resourced, like mine was. And what are we doing to work on the outreach to those under-resourced schools so that students have a choice of a wide variety of career pathways and can understand the things that they can do with something like a CPA license, whether that's running their own business, because when we hear students say, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur, well, that's a CPA. If you hear students say, gosh, I'm really into like computer science and technology and coding, that's something that CPAs are doing. So the more that we can talk about all of these different parts of the profession and how they're moving and changing, the more we'll be able to address things like those pipeline challenges early on. One of the things that we're doing here in California is supporting the Community College to CPA pipeline program, which basically helps move students from those community college classes through completing their degrees at four-year schools and then into the profession. We have a number of what we call industry influencers, obviously hot career, right? Everybody wants to be an influencer. These are students that we have on campuses throughout California, both community colleges and four-year institutions, who are encouraging people to learn more about the accounting profession. They're encouraging their classmates to, attend events and go to Cal CPA meetings and meet firms and just get the word out about the profession. We're also providing scholarship support, so putting our money where our mouth is. Cal CPA is giving out about $300,000 in scholarships each year to students who are studying accounting around the state. And then, of course, we want to make sure that we're supporting our academic partners in their curriculum to make sure that we're addressing all of the different things that CPAs need to know as they move into a career in 2023, and making sure that that curriculum is fresh and reflects what employers and the public need as well. Also, I wanted to mention that we are working on networking and engagement for emerging professionals. One thing that we've seen in the last couple of years is that students who had a lot of their educational experience through COVID are not as up to date on their modern workplace skills, and we need to make sure that we have a way to keep them engaged and plugged in, whether they're in a hybrid environment or whether they've never attended a networking event because that wasn't something that was available to them when they were attending Zoom school, or just keeping skills fresh for things that they might have learned online that now they need to apply and practice in person. That's a whole variety of different leadership training and leadership opportunities that we're doing. And then we're supporting the positive firm culture to make sure that we're looking at innovative approaches to employee engagement as well. And then for folks who have been in the profession for a while, it's offering continuing education and upskilling in those new and emerging areas like ESG, AI, data analytics, and IT systems. All of those things that are part of the new CPA Evolution curriculum are certainly things that are top of mind to current members who may not have had that training in the past. Cal CPA is also working with the Center for Audit Quality on their Accounting Plus initiative, which you may or may not have seen any of their social media posts. They're not targeted at anybody in this room because you're not 16. And it's basically the idea of reaching, neither am I, reaching students where they are to help them learn about what a CPA is, what they can do, and how they can impact their community. And those are different ways that we can bring people into the profession who might otherwise not have heard about it. And once they're here, help keep them here as well. One of the things that we know is really critical to these efforts is support for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's really baked into CalCPA's DNA. We're fostering that diversity, equity, and inclusion because it is paramount to success. We know that diversity leads to better outcomes, better innovation, and better sustainability. We have our own diversity commission, and we're working to advance diversity in the profession throughout thought leadership, research, and practical tools so that those who are in the profession can not just read about these research reports, but can actually implement them in their workplaces, whether that workplace is a solo practitioner all the way up through our largest firms. We have, in fact, authored a number of surveys. We just recently did a study to gather some benchmark data on diversity sentiment within the profession. That's in the most recent edition of our magazine, which is available online. And we're also making sure that we spotlight the diversity of our members when we're looking at things like conference committee composition, statewide committees, and looking at those leadership opportunities so that we can see that diversity at every level. We know that what we're getting is a lot of students who are coming in from diverse populations, but they're not always staying. So how do we make sure that we support them in their leadership journey to develop a sustainable career that can lead them to the highest levels of achievement in their organizations? And then I also wanted to just close with the importance of recognizing that regulatory coordination with the CBA oversight and how committed we are to making sure that things are as seamless for all the licensed CPAs in California as they are for our members. You know, sometimes that's just things like, as Dominic, when you came to our board meeting yesterday, you shared about how we can make the CPE framework easy for somebody to upload from our system to yours so that when they go to do their licensure renewal, that is a seamless process. And we want to make sure that we're working with you on initiatives and programs that support your consumer protection mission as well. We think that coordination leads to strong, relevant, and really practical regulations moving forward. And we know, of course, that there are a lot of challenges that are facing the profession, but at CalCPA, we really are trying to address those challenges and turn that around into opportunities for the profession moving forward. So we're proud to tackle those in tandem with you. And thank you so much for letting me share a little bit about our program of work this year.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Johnson. If you don't mind, I would like to say thank you so much for coming here. I'm very excited by what you've shared with us and your enthusiasm and plans for the upcoming year, and do think we are fortunate to have CalCPA helping with the pipeline issues, and your work is very important, and I do see how it complements what we do here. Are there any board questions or comments before we I want to make sure we take advantage of having Ms. Johnson here. Ms. Hines?
Thank you, President Salazar. Thank you for joining us and for really helpful and insightful remarks. You have an ambitious, you've laid out a very ambitious agenda that is very exciting. Sounds very exciting. And so I'm very interested in finding the ways in which we can partner on a number of the initiatives that you talked about, particularly around the pipeline issues and the idea of looking at, going a little bit further down, upstream, I guess they call it, into like middle school and high school, and really finding ways for, us to expose younger folks, kids, to the prospect of additional employment opportunities, career opportunities. I'm a public member here, and I have to say I didn't really comprehend the scope of opportunities that were available to folks in the the accounting profession. I just thought accountants, but I have a much greater appreciation for it, and I do talk a lot to younger people as they are contemplating, what their opportunities may be. I do talk to them about this as a profession, and I think you're right. it goes without saying that a lot of us don't know what this profession is about except for what they kind of see and what they assume. So this idea of going out and really making a concerted effort to meet kids where they are and to help them to get an idea and understanding of, this is an industry that has great potential for them, for, financial stability, professional stability and sustainability. It's very important. So I look forward to finding ways that we can partner on that and support you on that and be creative about how we can really pursue, that goal. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you so much. And I think that anytime that we can put those positive messages out there about who CPAs are and what they do, it helps counteract some of those popular perceptions that come in through media and other places. So I've encouraged all of our members when they're doing something related to the CPA profession to share that to the extent that they're comfortable, or amplify the words of others on social media, whether that's LinkedIn or Instagram or those sorts of things, because the more we can show that this is the coolest profession around, that it offers up these opportunities, the more that those impressions will reach our target demographic there and helping people make choices at those career inflection points.
Thank you. And Ms. Lotta, did you have your hand up before? No? Ms. Ward?
I want to say thank you, Ms. Johnson, for coming. And if you have a business card, I'm an educator at a community college. When you mentioned that transition of pathways to transfer, I understood all that. So now I have to go back to my campus, Diablo Valley College, and I'm going to ask, hey, did you guys know, hope you're participating? I hope that kind of thing. So I thank you for sharing that, because I want to make sure those students on that campus are aware of all the opportunities that's available as well.
Sure, I'd be happy to provide you with that information. I have a QR code these days instead of a business card. And I'd be happy to share that with you, as well as, find ways that we can partner to help your students find those pathways to success too.
Ms. Lotta?
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for your presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I appreciate you for sharing your personal story of how you got into the profession, because many of us have done the traditional path of getting an accounting degree and going to a firm and working on that right away. So it's nice to see someone who's so successful and highly esteemed as you, knowing you got into our profession in a different way. So it's important that we make sure that we're capturing those candidates as well, people who change careers later on. So I really appreciate you sharing that personal story. And the thorough report was really great. And again, Ms. Hines said very exciting. So you guys are doing very important work, and thank you for that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. And so that hashtag was Stronger Together, everyone, in case you're amplifying any messages out there. So thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to continued conversations.
Thanks, and thanks for your time.
Mm-hmm. So moving along to item 5F, it is a written report only. It is our legislative tracking chart. But we've had a couple agenda items, so I did just want to invite any public comment here in Pomona, where we are now meeting. Pomona is where I am. And there is no public comment, so I would like to ask our WebEx moderator to please open up for public comment on agenda items 5D through F before we move along.
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you're logged in and would like to participate, click the question mark inside of the square, which is typically located bottom right corner of your WebEx screen, and type the word comment to make sure it goes to all panelists before clicking the send button. If you called in, you can press *3 to raise your virtual hand. At this time, I see no request for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please close the Q&A. All right, so now we are moving along to agenda item G, and I'd like to introduce Mr. David Hemphill for update, discussion, and possible action on legislation.
Thank you, President Salazar. Good morning, members. This item is to provide the California Board of Accountancy with an update and opportunity for discussion on the legislative proposals which the CBA has already taken a position or previously considered. The legislature completed its 2023 session last Thursday, the 14th of September, and I will just provide the most recent status of each of these bills. We'll start with Senate Bill 372, which addresses dead naming and how boards should display licensee name and/or gender changes on their website. The bill did pass the legislature and is currently pending on the governor's desk. If there are no questions, I can move to Senate Bill 544. So SB 544 would amend the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act related to how a state body conducts a meeting by teleconference. Amendments were incorporated since the last CBA meeting to further address stakeholder concerns. The bill passed the legislature and is currently pending on the governor's desk. On a related note, last week the governor signed Senate Bill 143, which was a budget trailer bill that incorporated language to reinstate the COVID-era authorization for a state body to hold public meetings through teleconferencing. Its provisions took effect immediately upon enactment, and its authorization lasts through December 31st, 2023. So this bill fills the gap from the prior authorization, which expired in July of 2023, and the potential effective date of SB 544, should it be signed, the teleconferencing provisions of which would not take effect until January 1st of 2024. And the CBA did take a support position on SB 544. If there are no questions, I can move to 816. All right, so Senate Bill 816, Senator Roth, this includes the fee proposal language that the CBA approved and took a support position on at its May CBA meeting of 2023. The bill was amended in the final week of session to include all the proposed changes to Section 5134 related to fees in this bill and SB 887. This is a legislative process to ensure the provisions are not overwritten if both should become law, since both bills amended the same code section. The bill passed the legislature and is currently pending on the governor's desk. If there are no questions, I will move on to 887. Thank you. So Senate Bill 887 contains the CBA non-substantive changes approved at the January 2023 meeting. SB 887 was amended in the final week of session to also include the proposed changes to Section 5134 related to fees to ensure it would not be overwritten if both should become law, since both bills did amend the same code section. So that bill did also pass the legislature and is currently pending on the governor's desk. The governor has 30 days to act on those. I will now hand it back to President Salazar, but I am happy to answer any questions the members may have.
Questions from the members, comments? Seeing none. I suppose, yeah, might as well. Okay, seeing no comments from our members, we will go through our regular process and invite public comment here in Pomona. And seeing no public comment here in Pomona, I would like to invite our WebEx moderator, please open up the online Q&A for agenda item related to update and discussion on legislation.
The moderator, the Q&A is open. The instructions are on the screen. If you're logged in, would like to participate, click that question mark, type comments into 12 panelists. If you called in, *3 if you would like to raise your virtual hand. No requests at this time. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, moderator. Well, that concludes our item. Thank you, Mr. Hemphill, for that presentation. And we are now charging along in our agenda, and we are at the Sunset Review Report item. And so this is something we've seen for several meetings, and I would like to invite Deanne Pierce to present.
Good morning and thank you. So the purpose of this agenda item is to provide the board an opportunity to review the CBA's newly designed draft 2024 Sunset Review Report, which is included as attachment 1. Following the July board meeting, staff completed edits to the Sunset Report based on input provided by members and made some other changes, both substantive and non-substantive. And attachment 2 is a red line version reflecting most of those changes with the exception of some formatting and some footnotes. What I've done is we've done a section by section review at prior meetings. But for this meeting, I was only going to highlight the few sections that have either new information or substantive changes. But before I do that, I'll just open it up to members if there's any comments or questions on section 1 or sections 4 through 10, because those are the sections that just had non-substantive edits. Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to start then with section 2, which is fiscal and staff, and it starts on page 27. The final budget information was added for fiscal year 22-23, and we made corresponding changes to the narrative for our accountancy fund reserve balance and our months in reserve. Moving on to section 3, the licensing program. It starts on page 40. The licensing statistics for 22-23 were added, and during the design phase, the table numbers were inadvertently removed from the tables, so those will be added back for the final draft in November. Moving on to section 11, we added a new issue number 6, which is accounting firms with ownership comprised solely of licensees who are not authorized to sign attest engagements. This was an issue previously discussed by the board and direction provided to make some statutory changes. And then for section 12, attachments, which starts on page 91, my intention for attachment G was to update and include website links for the prior 4 fiscal years of the CBA annual reports. However, I somehow only managed to get the report names in there and not the links, so that will be added for the November board meeting. Attachment L was added with the statutory language proposal relating to issue number 5 regarding the peer review topic. So before I move on to what you can expect for the November draft, is there any questions or comments from members on the substantive information that was added to this version of the Sunset Report? Okay. So, Mr. Lynn?
I just wanted to start. We're good.
Okay. So for the November report, we're going to have some additional information, starting with the licensing program, section 3. You may recall during the July board meeting, I mentioned that there were 2 new questions that got added by the legislature that needed to be included in the Sunset Review Report, and our plan was to include it for the September version. So what we've done is there's 2 questions, and we've included it in the agenda item. It's not in the actual formatted document yet. It will be included for the November version. The first is question 27. And it is listed on page 3 of the agenda item, and there is also a proposed response, which may be adjusted just depending on or based on the November, or it may be adjusted in November based on yesterday's discussion on the occupational analysis. But at this point, is there any feedback from the members regarding the proposed response for question 27 regarding the OPES occupational analysis?
I don't think so. My only question is, would you anticipate the staff being, if it's revised, you anticipate the staff being able to like print out the revised response and so members can actually look at it, because it is evolving and so it will be a last minute item. So that was my only question.
Well, we can do a couple things and we can certainly confer offline, but we can take what we have here and put it in the November draft. And then we still have time, a little bit of time after the November board meeting to make some adjustments, so we can kind of put where we think we're going to land in the November draft, and then we can adjust accordingly after that. So if that works for the board.
I think it does. I'm very flexible. I just want to make sure that we have something written to look at for our visual board members like myself, who hearing it is great, but they kind of want to see what it'll look like on one page, not the whole report, maybe a single page.
Got it.
That would be great.
Understood.
Thank you.
The second question is in section 7. It's the workforce development and job creation. And the new question was question 63. And we've actually included the question and a proposed response on pages 3 and 4 of the agenda item. This topic isn't really evolving. So if there's any feedback from members regarding the proposed response, we can incorporate that into the November version. Or if members are okay with this, we can move forward with this response and make sure it's included in the formatted version for November. Not seeing any comments. And then just a couple other things for the November version. Section 12, all website links will be included. Attachment F will be updated to include the fiscal year 22-23 statistics for the customer satisfaction surveys. We'll have attachment M, which will be the statutory language to address the new issue that was included in this version. And that's all we anticipate bringing forward for the November version. The plan going forward would be have a almost complete final draft for November, and then make any minor, hopefully just minor edits after the November board meeting, and then it would be submitted to the legislature by the deadline of January 4th is our time frame. And with that, if there's any edits that members may have after the board meeting, if you could get those to me by October 5th, that gives about a 2-week time frame, and then we can make sure that those are included in the November agenda item for final member review. And with that, I will turn it back over to President Salazar, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Fantastic, thank you. I mean, this is a very large project, and so thank you for all of that work. Comments, questions from our board members on this agenda item? All right, any public comment here in Pomona? Seeing none, I'd like to invite our WebEx moderator to please open for public comment on this agenda online.
Moderator, the Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you would like to participate and logged in, press the question mark inside of the square, type comments, send to all panelists. If you're calling in, press *3 to raise your virtual hand. At this time, I see no requests. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes, moderator, please close Q&A. All right, thank you very much. And we are now moving along to agenda item 5I, and I would like to share that we are welcoming the Department of Consumer Affairs Deputy Director, to give a report on departmental activities. And so joining us online will be Yvonne Durantes. So just a reminder, she was appointed back in October of 2022 to serve as the Assistant Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations. And she comes to this service with a lengthy record of contributions to DCA and a variety of other state agencies. So her bio is included online, and she will be joining us via WebEx. So I would like to invite her to make her presentation. Thank you.
Good morning. Are you able to hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me this morning. I'm happy to be here and happy to be here to provide you with some updates. I do have quite a bit of updates, but I'm happy to answer any questions at the end or provide any additional information at any point. I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to start with our DEI update, our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion update. And so next week on September 29th, the DEI Steering Committee here at DCA will hold its quarterly meeting. The committee will be discussing employee engagement, cultural events, and observances, as well as membership composition, DEI training opportunities, DEI hiring principles, and also the development of a DEI webpage. And so the DEI Steering Committee is also happy to announce that an outside consultant, Dr. Bernard Gibson, will be providing an in-person DEI training to DCA managers, supervisors, and leaders in October. And in addition, Dr. Gibson will also be providing a virtual training to board members on October 9th as well. And so Dr. Gibson has over 20 years of corporate experience managing teams and training employees in business effectiveness. Dr. Gibson also has extensive teaching experience at various colleges, including serving as an adjunct faculty member since 2006 at University of Massachusetts School for Business and Professional Studies. Additional information on registering for this virtual event has been sent out. I believe there was an additional reminder sent out earlier this week. And so if any board members are interested in attending this virtual training, please do let us know. And we are happy to get you registered. For those that cannot make it, the training will also be recorded and it will be available later. And so I do look forward to continuing to update you on additional training opportunities later. On November 7th, we do also have a UMass consultant, Christopher Veal, who will provide a training on DEI dialogue for leaders to DCA managers, supervisors, and leaders. And so Veal's training will include example language and tools. He'll be discussing psychological safety and how it impacts these conversations, as well as we'll be including interactive discussion around challenges for leaders currently facing in the DEI world. And lastly, the DEI Steering Committee is also pleased to highlight the work of the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology, which is collaborating with the LA County Probation Department to launch the first youth and county level barbering program. And so the board hopes to have it operational by late winter. And the board has been collaborating with the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, also known as CDCR, to relaunch its testing program within state correctional facilities, thus expanding to including barbering. And it's also anticipated that this will be a large program with 4 facilities committing to include barbering schools. If the board wishes to share DEI activities with other boards and bureaus, please have your EO share so with our Deputy Director, Tanya, who is the DEI Steering Committee Coordinator. So that is it for DEI updates. Moving on to press release translations. To further the department's efforts to reach Californians that we serve, DCA is currently requesting that boards and bureaus translate press releases into Spanish. Given that California's top non-English language is Spanish, we do want to establish a standard for translating releases into both English and Spanish, and we'd like to encourage the evaluation of additional languages as well that might serve the audience of your licensees or program to enhance the information that is released to Californians. Moving on, I know some of you touched on it already, but I do want to provide a couple updates in terms of in-person meetings and the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. As you are aware, since July, public meetings are subject to traditional pre-COVID requirements for open meetings. DCA board and bureaus should be prepared to continue to conduct public meetings that are compliant to Bagley-Keene. And so DCA has a Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act guide that is available and has been provided to your executive officer with a list of available meeting locations throughout the state. But if you do have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And as was mentioned on September 13th, SB 143, which is a trailer bill that includes, among other things, language related to Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. It was signed by Governor Newsom, and it does allow for remote public meetings without noticed locations accessible to the public until December 31st. And so since it is a budget trailer bill, it is effective immediately. And similarly, SB 544, which may allow for some meetings to be held without notice, without noticing the location of board members, thus allowing remote virtual meetings, is still going to continue through the legislative process. And so the Department Division of Legislative Affairs is working with stakeholders, and we will be providing your board with updates as we do continue to hear more about the status of the bill. Moving on to the Enlighten Enforcement Project. The department is implementing the Enlightened Enforcement Project, which has been piloted by the California Dental Board. The project aims to improve procedures, best practices, and standardized procedures for all boards and bureaus, ultimately creating a template for enforcement policies and procedures. And so as more updates become available, we will keep you posted as well on that project. Moving on to data governance project, DCA does continue to improve its reports regarding to licensing and enforcement activities. And so the director has been working with multiple work groups, has been holding various meetings beginning late April through early July, and has been working with staff from each board and bureau to update data matrix that are reported to DCA's annual report. And so DCA's goal is to ensure consistency between the reported data in the annual report, DCA's data portal, and board and bureau's sunset reports. And so I know you touched on your sunset report earlier today, so we are hoping that this project and these efforts are fruitful and of good use. And ongoing meetings are expected to continue to help build new reports and or modify existing ones to provide new metrics for next year's annual reports. Moving on to onboarding reminders, you just want to make sure members are aware that before beginning service or performing official functions, whether it is newly appointed or reappointed board members, it's important that you take your oath. The oath must be taken before an officer who is able to administer oaths, and so otherwise you are not able to perform functions as a board member until that oath is taken. Again, that's whether you are newly appointed or reappointed. Additionally, board members must complete the documents listed on board member appointment checklist, HR 5, and return them to the Office of Human Resources no less than 30 days after appointment or reappointment. And again, duties cannot be assumed and appointments cannot be processed until these documents are approved and received and accurately completed thoroughly. So incomplete packets can delay payments and travel reimbursements as well. So please do keep that in mind. Moving on to required board member trainings. So this year for 2023, there are 2 DCA-wide mandatory trainings, and this includes sexual harassment prevention training, as well as information security awareness. And so all DCA employees and appointees, including board and advisory council members, will need to complete the sexual harassment prevention training this year. Board members must take the 2-hour supervisory training. And I am noticing this because I do want to mention that there are 2 different types of trainings, but we want to make sure that you're aware that board members are required to take the 2-hour supervisory training. And so the training is required every odd-numbered year. It is online, it's self-paced, and it is approximately 2 hours. And additionally, board members who have a DCA assigned email, so that would be an email ending in @dca.ca.gov, are also required to complete the Information Security Awareness Fundamentals training. This training addresses everyone's role in protecting DCA data and information, and the training is also available online. I think it's actually only about 15 minutes long, so highly encourage you to take it. Both sexual harassment prevention training and information security awareness trainings are available at our department's learning management system. If you do have any issues with logging in or not being able to find any of the trainings, please feel free to reach out to Board and Bureau Relations. I am personally happy to either reset your password or help you determine what your login credentials are. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Moving on to out-of-state travel updates. So recently on September 13th, Governor Newsom did also sign SB 447, which was authored by Senate Pro Tem Tony Atkins, which ends California's restriction on taxpayer-funded travel by state agencies and departments that states have adopted discriminatory anti-LGBTQ plus laws, essentially ending California's restricted travel list. And it creates a new public awareness project that will consult with community leaders to promote California's values of acceptance and inclusion of LGBTQ plus community across the country. In the past, several out-of-state travels were not authorized because the travel was out of state and it was too restricted travel list. However, this will be lifted. This will lift that restriction and permit out-of-state travel to all states if the trip is critical to functions and needs of the board. And so this bill took effect immediately. And again, if you do have any questions in regard to out-of-state travel, please feel free to either contact your executive officer or reach out to us. Lastly, I do just want to share that any board members who were either appointed or reappointed within the last year, we will be having our board member orientation training on October 10th, so just a couple weeks away. It will be offered virtually, and it is the last training of the year. And so if any of you are looking to satisfy this requirement, in order to be in compliance, please do register. The dates for 2024 have not been established yet. They typically take place about 3 times a year. And so depending on several elements, several factors, the trainings might be either in person or virtual. And so we do encourage you to take advantage of this October's virtual session. Other than that, thank you for bearing with me through all those updates. I don't have any additional updates, but I am happy to answer any questions or, repeat anything that you may have missed.
Thank you, Ms. Durantes, for that report. There was a lot in there. So thank you so much for the reminders and for some of the new information. Are there any questions from our board members? Ms. Lata?
Thank you, President Salazar. I just want to make sure, was I correct in hearing if you don't have a dca.ca.gov email address, that information security training doesn't apply to you?
Correct.
Thank you.
Ms. Pierce?
Just wanted to add, if you do have a cba.ca.gov, it does apply to you because, yeah.
That is correct.
Thank you for clarifying that. Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, I suppose with every agenda item, we do public comment. So before we move to public comment, I do want to say thank you again for taking the time to speak to us and share that important information. I would like to open for public comment here in Pomona. And seeing no public comment on the Department of Consumer Affairs report that we just heard, I'd like to invite our WebEx moderator to please open up the online portal for public comment on item 5I.
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you would like to participate, click that question mark inside of the square, typically lower right corner of your WebEx screen, and type the word comment in the text field. Make sure it goes to all panelists before clicking the send button. If you're calling in, you can press *3 from your phone to raise your virtual hand, and then we will call on you. At this time, I see no request for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes, moderator, please close Q&A. And that moves us along to item number 6, which is the report of the Vice President. And I will be covering that in the absence of our Vice President. So I would draw your attention to Agenda Item 6A, which is to recommend the appointment of Jeff DeLizer, CPA, to the Enforcement Advisory Committee. The Enforcement Advisory Committee, also called the EAC, assists the Board of Accountancy in an advisory capacity with various enforcement activities. This includes things such as reviewing closed investigation files, providing technical guidance on open investigations, and participating in investigative hearings. Vice President Chu conferred with the CBA Executive Officer and verified that Mr. DeLizer has met the appropriate requirements for license renewal and has demonstrated the skills and knowledge to serve as a member on the EAC. Mr. DeLizer has previously served on this Enforcement Advisory Committee and is currently serving on our Peer Review Oversight Committee as well. With that, I would like to ask for a motion to appoint Mr. Jeff DeLizer, CPA, to the Enforcement Advisory Committee through a term ending September 30th, 2025. Ms. Hines. All right, we have a first from Ms. Hines, and I believe Mr. Savoy.
I second that.
We have a first and a second by Mr. Savoy. Board comments? Seeing none, I would like to open for public comment here in Pomona. Seeing no public comment, I would like to invite the WebEx moderator to please open up public comment on agenda item 6A.
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. Instructions are on the screen. If you would like to participate, click that question mark type comment, send it to all panelists. If you called in, you can press *3 to raise your virtual hand. At this time, I see no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes, please close public comment. And with that, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Ms. Reed to call for the vote.
Nancy Corrigan? Yes. Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Christian Lotta?
Yes.
Tony Lynn?
Yes.
Katrina Salazar?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
Evangeline Ward?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Right, thank you very much for that. The next item is to recommend the reappointment of Michael L. Williams, CPA, to the Qualifications Committee. This committee assists the CBA in its licensure activities by reviewing the experience of applicants for licensure and making recommendations to the CBA. This includes conducting work paper reviews with the applicant or the employer present and verifying that the responses provided are reflective of the requisite experience for licensure. Vice President Chu has conferred with the CBA Executive Officer and verified that Mr. Williams has met the appropriate requirements for license renewal and has demonstrated the skills and knowledge to continue serving as a member of the Qualifications Committee, or QC. May I get a motion to reappoint Mr. Michael L. Williams, CPA, through September 30th? Ms. Corrigan.
I move to adopt that recommendation.
Okay. And that's through 2025 as presented in the materials. Mr. Jacobson.
I second that motion.
All right, fantastic. We have a first from Corrigan, a second from Jacobson. Board member comments? I will just throw in my only comment is we actually have our member in the room, and so I'm very excited about it and appreciative of all of your effort and participation supporting our committees and this board. So with that, seeing no other comment, I would like to invite public comment here in Pomona. Seeing none, I'd like to invite our WebEx coordinator to open up for public comment for agenda item 6B.
This is the moderator. The Q&A is open. Instructions are on the screen. If you would like to participate and are logged in, press the question mark inside the square, type comment, send it to all panelists before clicking, or select all panelists before clicking send. Those who are called in, press *3 to raise your virtual hand. At this time, no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes, moderator, please close Q&A, and I'd like to turn the meeting over to Ms. Reed for the vote.
Evangeline Ward?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
Katrina Salazar?
Yes.
Tony Lynn?
Yes.
Christian Lotta?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
And Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Fantastic, and congratulations, Mr. Williams. All right, so moving along to agenda item 6C. This item is to recommend the appointment of Fausto Hinojosa, CPA, Jeffrey DeLizer, CPA, and Nick Peterson, CPA, to the Peer Review Oversight Committee. This committee assists the Board of Accountancy and an advisory committee in its oversight of our peer review program, or of the peer review program. And I will share with you that Vice President Chu has conferred with the executive officer and verified that all three of these individuals meet the appropriate requirements for licensure and have demonstrated the skills and knowledge to continue serving as members on the Peer Review Oversight Committee. I am looking for a motion to reappoint Mr. Hinojosa, DeLizer, and Peterson to the Peer Review Oversight Committee through September 30th, 2025. Ms. Hines. Thank you very much. We have a first. Ms. Ward.
I'll second the motion.
All right, thank you. We have a first from Ms. Hines, a second from Ms. Ward. Are there any? Yes?
I was.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. She is very on track. We are now moving to board comment, and I'd like to call on Ms. Hines.
Just a little levity. I wanted to say, pass along to Fausto that I enjoyed his resume, his CV. It's kind of fun.
Excellent. Any other board comments? All right, seeing none, I'd like to invite for public comment here in Pomona. And seeing none, I'd like to invite our WebEx coordinator to please open up the online comments queue for Q&A for item 6C.
This is the moderator. The Q&A is open. Instructions are on the screen. Press the question mark, type comment, send it to all panelists, or press *3 from your phone to raise your hand. No requests. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes, please close the Q&A, and I'd like to turn the meeting over to Ms. Reed for the vote.
Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Christian Lotta,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes?
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
and Evangeline Ward.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you very much for that. Agenda item 7, there is no report on this agenda item. And so that brings us into our morning break, which will be 15 minutes long. To make things easier for everyone, let's make it a 17-minute break, and we will resume at exactly 10:30 sharp. Thank you. All right, welcome back from the break. Thank you, everyone. We're moving on with agenda item 8, which is the report of the executive officer. We have 2 agenda items under here, and the first one is the administration activity report. So I would like to invite Deanne Pierce, our assistant executive officer, to make a presentation.
Thank you so much. I just have a brief update this morning. As noted in the report, we're continuing to transition to our Microsoft Teams calling, which enables our staff to initiate and receive calls via their computer, which really provides maximum flexibility for those staff who are working both remote and in the office. The one kind of nuance to this is that the new Teams numbers begin with Sacramento's new area code 279, which is a bit different than our 916 area code numbers that we've had forever. So anyway, we're doing some outreach on that. We have information in our upcoming update publication, and then we're also going to be doing some messaging on our website and social media. So I'm sure it won't take long to get that information out there. Also wanted to mention that any members who need to get a CBA email address established or have their password reset for an existing CBA email account can reach out to our awesome Manny Estacio over here. His contact information was in the September EO report, or you can always reach out to Dominic, myself, or Katrina, Rebecca, and we can get you connected with Manny. That concludes my presentation. I'm just happy to answer any questions you may have.
And which Katrina would that be?
Oh, that would be Katrina Pierce.
Thank you very much. All right. Are there any questions from our board members on Ms. Pierce's presentation before we move along? We will be opening for public comment at the end of item 8 for both A and B. And so seeing no comments, thank you, Ms. Pierce. We are going to be moving along to the communications and outreach report and inviting Mr. David Hemphill to the microphone.
Thank you again, President Salazar. Hello again, members. First, I'd like to extend a big thank you to all of you members that participated in the various outreach events that were held yesterday here at Cal Poly Pomona. The CBA's commitment to outreach and education took center stage. We had 2 separate presentations that were given to students, one for undergraduates and one for graduate students. CPA evolution was a big topic of discussion in both sessions, now less than 3 months away from its implementation. I would like to extend a special thank you to President Salazar, Vice President Tu, Secretary Treasurer Rosenbaum, and Member Corrigan for their presentations and their participation. It all went very well. We had a sign made that was displayed at all the events yesterday that had a QR code linking to our Sure CPA project, and appreciated the transcript reviews that they did with CBA staff. We actually had 4 of our staff members that spent several hours meeting individually with the students, and there were quite a few that took advantage of that. So, like I said, all went very well. We had a meet and mingle session with the board members. Great opportunity. The students were asking questions. They heard directly from you. I love seeing them just walk right up with all of their questions, and I'm sure that their conversations inspired them to continue in their pursuit of a CPA license. So again, thanks to taking part in that. We had a town hall event with faculty from Cal Poly Pomona. There were quite a few members that were there. It was right down the hall up here. We discussed a lot of things with them, got more data for our Sure CPA project that we're documenting all their feedback, and we will compile some of that data and present it to you at our January 2024 meeting. So overall, I would say the Cal Poly Pomona CBA meetings plus outreach events proved to be a success and a very good match. So thanks again for all of your help. Speaking of the Sure CPA project, if you've been scrolling through your social media timelines recently, you may have come across the first video produced by Jacob Sudia, who is the CBA's new information and planning specialist. We've introduced him to you in the past. The video was created to encourage students to take this Sure CPA survey with the goal of inspiring a diverse response group. It was posted on all of our social media pages, and I would love to show it to you right now. So let's take a peek at it.
Are you a college student pursuing a degree in accounting? Maybe you're a recent graduate or already a CPA? Regardless of your status, we want your feedback regarding your understanding of the educational requirements to become a CPA. Were the requirements and guidance clear? Or are there areas that we can improve? The CBA just launched the Sure CPA project, and our goal is to help clarify the educational requirements for CPA licensure. But we need your help. Please go to the CBA website and take the Sure CPA survey to let us know your thoughts on how you understood or didn't understand the educational requirements. Students, graduates, CPAs, click on the Sure CPA survey banner at cba.ca.gov to take the survey.
All right, there we go. Good job, Jacob. Sitting right there. There he is. All right, very good. So that's a good example of some of the videos that we'll be producing here as we move forward. We've just completed a CPA evolution video that will get posted next week. We'll start distributing that, so maybe I'll show that to you in November. Update 99 was published this week, and we have a feature article that was written by Kathy A. Johnson, CPA, who is the Vice President of the Alliance of Black Women Accountants, and of course the Vice Chair of the CBA's Enforcement Advisory Committee. Ms. Johnson describes her experiences in the profession and what the ABWA is doing to support its membership. This article aligns with the CBA's goal of promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion within the accounting profession. So we're going to highlight that article. Staff is already hard at work creating something special for the next issue, which is update issue number 100, which is scheduled to be published before the end of 2023. Our social media pages continue to grow during the summer. Increased audience and engagement. Actually, August, we had our second highest month's gain of the entire year in 2023, so that was encouraging. We've created a new social media calendar, providing a more focused and strategic approach to delivering more regular content to our stakeholders. Finally, the CBA has enhanced our committee roster page on the website, which now includes biographies of all of the members of our 3 advisory committees. We have an amazing group of diverse committee members, and I welcome you to learn more about their background and careers by checking out the new information provided on that page. That concludes my presentation on this agenda item. I'll turn it back over to President Salazar, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Board members, questions, comments for Mr. Hemphill? All right. Well, seeing none, I'd like to thank you for all of that hard work as well as that that information that you presented to us. Now we are concluding agenda item 8. I would like to invite public comment at this point in time for agenda items 8A or 8B. So I am asking for any public comment here in Pomona. And seeing no public comment in Pomona, I'd like to ask our WebEx coordinator to please open up the online Q&A for public comment on 8A and 8B.
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you're logged in and would like to comment, please select the question mark inside a square, type comment, and send it to all panelists. If you're calling in, press *3 from your phone to raise your virtual hand. At this time, I see no request for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A? And this is the moderator. I am not hearing any audio from my end. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Please close the Q&A. Thank you. And moving on to agenda item number 9, report of is the 9A is the Enforcement Advisory Committee report. There is no report on this item, so we're moving directly to B, which is our Qualifications Committee. So at this point, I'd like to invite Mr. Michael Williams to the table to take the microphone and present for the approval of committee dates.
Good morning, President Salazar, members of the board. I am Michael Williams, Chair of the CBA's Qualification Committee. QC members approved the proposed 2024 QC meeting dates at its July 26, 2023 meeting. The QC recommends that the CBA adopt or modify the proposed 2024 QC meeting dates. That concludes my presentation, short presentation. I will now turn it back over to President Salazar, and I'm happy to answer any questions members may have.
Okay, are there any questions from board members about the revisions on this calendar? All right. Seeing none, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the 2024 Qualifications Committee meeting dates. Ms. Lata?
So moved.
All right, so we do have a first from Ms. Lata. Ms. Corrigan? Second that motion. All right, fantastic. We do have a first. We have a second. Board questions or comments? Hearing none, I would like to invite public comment here in Pomona. And seeing no public comment in Pomona, would like to invite our WebEx coordinator to please open up online Q&A for public comments on agenda item 9B1.
Sorry, thank you. The Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen. If you would like to participate, click that question mark, type comment, send to all panelists, or press *3 from your phone to raise your hand. No request. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes, moderator, please close the Q&A. Thank you very much, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
All right, and we move along to our Peer Review Oversight Committee. Oh, sorry, we did not do a vote. So while Ms. Ross is please taking her seat and getting comfortable, please have a seat. I'd like to take the formality of actually voting for that. We didn't bother. So Ms. Reed, if you could please call for the vote. It'll be a nail biter. Let's see what happens.
Nancy Corrigan. Yes. Carrie Ann Farrell Hines. Yes. Dan Jacobson.
Yes.
Christian Lotta,
Yes.
Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Okay,
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
and Evangeline Ward.
Yes.
The motion carries.
why, thank you. I appreciate the staff for keeping me on target. I was so worried about closing open public comment, I forgot to actually vote. So now we will move along in appropriate order to our next agenda item, and I would like to welcome to the microphone Ms. Laura Ross, Chair of our Peer Review Oversight Committee, and invite you to present your report.
Good morning, President Salazar, members of the board. I am Laura Ross, Chair of the CBA's Peer Review Oversight Committee. I'm happy to provide a report on the PROC's August 11th meeting. First, I would like to thank Vice President Tu for attending our meeting and providing an overview of the CBA activities from May 18th through July 27th and the 28th CBA meetings. The PROC members have engaged in several oversight activities since the May meeting. Members attended 8 report acceptance body, also known as RAB meetings. PROC members reported that these meetings met all expectations. Additionally, members reviewed 2 out-of-state administering entities, the Missouri Society of CPAs and the New England Peer Review, Inc. It was determined that they complied with all the administrative procedures and standards in all material respects as established by the CBA. 2 PROC members volunteered to participate in the 2023 administrative site visit to the California Society of Certified Public Accountants. The PROC also discussed, and this title is hard to say, the consideration of the Certified Public Accountant Experience Requirements Task Force, findings and recommendations, and the students understanding the requirements for a Certified Public Accountant project. That's a long title, okay, and provided the staff with feedback. Lastly, the PROC discussed and approved the 2024 meeting dates, which I will present in the next item. The next PROC meeting will be held on December 8th, 2023. I would like to turn discussion on this item back over to President Salazar, and I'd be happy to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Ross. Questions from our board members? Our chair? Seeing none, please continue.
Okay. For our second item, the PROC members approved the proposed 2024 PROC meeting dates at its August 11th meeting. Those should be in your attached materials. The PROC recommends that the CBA adopt or modify the proposed 2025 PROC meeting dates. That concludes my presentation, and I will now turn it back over to President Salazar, and I'm happy to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any comments or questions regarding the calendar that is being proposed? And Ms. Hines?
The calendar.
Do you need a motion?
I will provide that.
All right, thank you. So we have a motion to adopt the calendar for the Peer Review Oversight Committee as presented. Ms. Lotta?
I second.
Thank you. We have a first from Hines, a second from Lotta. Comment from board members? Seeing none, I would like to open for public comment on agenda items 9C here in Pomona. And seeing no public comment here, I'd like to invite our WebEx coordinator to please open for public comment online for agenda items 9C.
The moderator, the Q&A is open. Instructions are on the screen. If you would like to participate, click that question mark, type comment, send it to all panelists. Or if you're calling in, press *3 from your phone to raise the virtual hand. No requests at this time. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, moderator, please close the Q&A. And as we conclude this item, I do want to say to our chair, thank you so much. I know I probably should have done this early, but on behalf of myself, we really appreciate your leadership on this committee and the work that you and your committee members are all doing. So please, please share that with your team and let them
Thank you.
know.
It's a pleasure on part of all of us, I'm sure.
Important work, so thank you. And so that concludes the Peer Review Oversight Committee, and I did want to acknowledge. The vote, yes, I'm sorry. I just am charging through this meeting. We will actually vote on this. So Ms. Reed, could you do that? Could you call for the vote?
You did that exactly right. You said, I'd like to acknowledge the vote. On paper, it looks wonderful.
Evangeline Ward,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar, Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Christian Lotta, Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, and Nancy Corrigan. The motion carries.
Why, thank you very much. All right, and then I'd also like to invite Mr. Franzella to comment at this time.
Thank you, President Salazar. I'd like to thank Mr. Williams and Mr. Timothy Jones, who were both here yesterday taking part in the outreach events, including the meet and mingle. And I believe Mr. Williams actually did some of the video work yesterday. And I believe Mr. Jones had done that at our prior meeting. So I just wanted to extend our appreciation to them for their participation in those events.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Agenda item next is agenda item number 10, which is our report of the enforcement chief. So we are now inviting Ms. Carrie O'Connor, our Deputy Chief of the Enforcement Division, to join us at the table. And when you are ready, you are welcome to begin your presentation.
Thank you, President Salazar. Good morning. I am Carrie O'Connor, and I'm the Deputy Chief of the Enforcement Division. This activity report before you today is for the full fiscal year for 2022-23. The CBA received nearly 4,600 complaints. The graph on the bottom of page 1 provides a comparison of the total complaints received as of the same reporting period for the prior 2 fiscal years. You will see that compared with the prior 2 fiscal years, we have received an increase, a 68% increase over 2021, and a 4% increase over the same period for fiscal year 21-22. On page 2, we have included information on the top 3 complaint types, with complaints regarding unlicensed activity being the top complaint type. Moving on to investigations and investigations pending on page 3. At the end of the fiscal year, staff had closed a little over 5,000 cases, with 99% of those cases being closed within 1 year. The average days to close investigations was 123 days, which is a decrease since the last report. Enforcement had about 1,700 cases in its pending investigations inventory. Members will see an increase of pending investigations in the 6 to 12 month bracket compared to fiscal year 21-22. This is due largely to the influx in the number of unlicensed complaints received. There were 2 cases over 24 months, which are still actively being investigated. Members will see that the average age of our open cases is at 111 days. Discipline-related information can be found on page 4 of the report. Looking first at AG referrals, the CBA referred 38 matters to the AG and filed 28 pleadings, with the majority being accusations. The CBA had 24 matters pending at the AG's office, and the CBA has taken action on 37 final disciplinary orders. Now moving on to citations and fines on page 5, the CBA issued 463 citations, and 61% of those citations were for a specific violation related to the 2012 continuing education requirement. The CBA had received 64 citation and fine appeals, and we withdrew or modified 45 of the citations. In most cases, the licensee either provided new mitigating evidence or complied with the issue that resulted with the issuance of the citation. Moving on to unlicensed activity on page 6, the CBA received almost 2,200 complaints regarding unlicensed activity, and we have closed over 2,400 investigations through the entire fiscal year, with the majority being closed as a result of compliance. Last page is page 7, which contains information regarding probation monitoring. As of June 30th, we had 82 individuals on probation. There was a minor typo, so we identified actually 49 probation violations, with the majority being failure to submit the written quarterly reports. And at this time, I'd like to turn the discussion over to President Salazar and would be happy to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you for that report, Ms. O'Connor. Do we have any board member questions regarding the report or the presentation of it? Okay, so seeing none, I would like to ask if there is any public comment here in Pomona regarding this. And seeing none, open up, ask the WebEx moderator to please open up the online portal for any public comment regarding the enforcement activity report.
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen. Press the question mark inside of the square, type comment, send it to all panelists, or raise your hand virtually, pressing *3 from your phone. No request at this time. Would you like me to close the Q&A? And this is the moderator. You might be muted on your side.
Moderator, please close the Q&A. All right. And with that, there is no vote on this item. And so we will move on to item number 11, which is the report of the licensing chief. So we would like to invite, did I miss one? Oh, sorry. I was going to say, yes, Ms. Jennifer Huddy, our manager from Initial Licensing Unit, to present item 11A, which is our licensing activity report.
Thank you, President Salazar. As stated, my name is Jennifer Huddy. I'm the manager of the Initial Licensing Unit. This licensing activity report, or LAR, covers all of fiscal year 2022 through 23. The LAR begins with the reporting of processing times. Processing times were below 30 days on June 30th, 2023. The Initial Licensing Unit was briefly processing at 34 days after June 30th as staff caught up after the network migration, but the processing times have since returned to under 30 days. Now, if you turn your attention to page 2 of the LAR, you'll see that there were over 104,000 stakeholder inquiries in the form of emails and telephone calls. This is inclusive of CPA calls directed to the DCA call center. The decline in emails is likely attributed to the renewals unit receiving applications through CPA Connect, which were previously sent in by email. On to pages 3 and 4. As of June 30th, the examinations unit has approved 4,755 first-time applicants to sit for the CPA exam. The Initial Licensing Unit has approved over 3,000 applications for CPAs and firms. On pages 5 through 7, data related to renewal statistics, renewal deficiencies, and continuing education audits are displayed. Table 7 includes CE audit data. And we have 903 licensees who were selected for an audit so far in fiscal year 22-23. Of those, 684 have been found to be compliant. 120 are still in progress. Table 8 includes population data. As of June 30th, the CBA had a grand total of 114,985 licensees and registrations. This is a slight decline since May 30th, 2023. The total active CPA and PA and firms has grown slightly. However, the number of inactive, delinquent, and retired licensees has decreased. And that concludes my presentation. I will now turn it back over to President Salazar, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that presentation on the licensing activity report. Do our board members have any questions about the materials presented by Ms. Huddy? Mr. Savoy?
More of a comment than a question. If you look at page 8, about one of the slowest increases that we've had in many, many, many years, it just bears pipeline issues and validates, you know, what we've been talking about for quite a while. So I've never seen such a small increase year over year as this is showing us. So
Thank you for highlighting that. because I do think that's an important component to be thinking about when we have conversations about pipeline issues and other relevant topics on our agenda now and going forward. Any other comments from Ms. Huddy or questions? So seeing none, there's also the report on long-term licensing data trends. So please proceed.
Thank you, President Salazar. The purpose of this agenda item is to provide the CBA with its annual report on long-term licensing data trends that may be useful when considering the pipeline of future California CPAs. Staff derived the requested data from historical CPA licensing activity reports, NASBA annual and quarterly CPA exam data reports, and CBA's internal licensing databases. Turning to pages 2 and 3 of the agenda item, you can see the CPA has experienced fluctuations in the number of first-time and repeat CPA exam applications received and approved, as shown in graph 1 and 2. There is a notable increase in first-time applications for fiscal year 2022 through 23, which is likely attributed to applicants attempting to pass all 4 sections of the CPA exam prior to the implementation of CPA evolution. Graphs 3 and 4 on page 4 illustrate a steady decline in first-time test takers and all those who have passed the CPA exam in California and across all jurisdictions. This information should be kept in mind, along with other information when considering if indicators forecast a future CPA population sufficient to meet the needs of consumers. Moving to graph 5 on page 5, the number of CPA license applications has declined steadily since 2020 through 21, reaching a 10-year low in 2022 through 23. The number of applications received may spike in the coming fiscal years as exam applicants pass the CPA exam and apply for CPA licensure. Graphs 6 and 7 on page 6 illustrate accountancy corporation and accountancy partnership applications received and approved. The number of applications received and approved spiked for both corporations and partnerships in 2018 through 2019, and then leveled out beginning 2020 through 21. The decrease in applications shown in 2019 through 20 may be attributed to the COVID-19 pandemic. Moving to page 7, Table 1 provides the estimated number of new CPA licensees. Of the 2,868 new CPA licensees in 2022 through 23, only 243 were previously licensed. 2,625 of the applicants were applying for their CPA license for the first time. The CPA population has grown by almost 13,000 since 2019 through 2020. Graph 8 on page 8 represents the current CPA population. This includes active, inactive, delinquent, and retired CPAs. Table 2 on page 9 provides the number of CPAs in each status. As of June 30th, 62% of the CPA population is in active status. Of the 62% of active licensees, 56% hold a license with a test authority. Approximately 7% of CPAs reside out of state and 1% reside out of the country. Graph 9 on page 10 represents the accountancy firm population. This includes active and delinquent firms. As of June 30th, corporations made up 77% of the total firm population. Table 3 at the bottom of page 10 and Table 4 at the top of page 11 provide age demographic information for CPAs. The average age of a newly licensed CPA is 30, while the majority of California CPAs are age 49 or younger. The median age of a California CPA is 48. Finally, please note that the grand totals for tables 1 and 4 have been corrected and will be posted following this meeting. That concludes my presentation. I will now turn it back over to President Salazar, and I'm happy to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you very much for presenting this annual report. Comments, questions from the board members about the materials? Ms. Hines?
Thank you. Did we ask for staff to look at other states or to inquire with the AI CPA about what the trends are, outside of California in the pipeline and in the industry?
Thank you for that question, Ms. Center.
Happy to attempt to answer that question, Member Hines. So normally we have the AICPA data trends report come out right before we do this, and we're able to include that in this report. That particular document provides us a look more nationally that I think you would find interesting. We did not get that in time to include in our data trends report. Happy to bring that to an upcoming meeting once it's published. We do have information that was in the report related to other jurisdictions as it relates to the examination. But I think you'll find more relevant information to the pipeline in the AICPA report that is upcoming.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Lata?
Thank you, President Salazar. Is it too late to ask a question about the 11A item?
Proceed.
Okay, thank you. So I just had a question about the CBA support for the military individuals. I actually had a student ask me yesterday what the assistance is, and just for my general knowledge, I was just curious what that is, just in a general sense.
We have a dedicated staff member who expedites the applications and keeps an eye on them and communicates. She's the exclusive communication point for military applicants.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that and reminding us of that service that we're providing. Excellent. Well, wonderful. And I would just like to close by saying I do think this annual report is really important. And just as a board member, I find it really helpful to see this kind of breakdown when you focus on one number, which is total population. You get a different picture than when you start seeing the kind of details in this report. So thank you very much for doing the work and presenting it. So let's move on to public comment. Before we move along, there is no motion, but we've gone through our board comment. And so I'm inviting public comment on agenda item 11 here in Pomona. And seeing no public comments here, I'd like to invite our WebEx moderator to please open up the Q&A for any online comments.
Now open. The instructions are on the screen. Press the question mark, type comments, send it to all panelists, or raise your virtual hand if you're calling in by pressing *3 from your phone. No requests. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, moderator, please close the Q&A. Thank you very much, Ms. Huddy. All right, moving along in our agenda, we are now at agenda item 12, which is our regulations. And so I would like to invite Ms. Carrie O'Connor to the table for her presentation on licensees. Sorry, on the discussion and possible action to amend proposed regulatory text. And I will let her say all of the very long, complicated descriptions of that.
Thank you. Hello again. The purpose of this agenda item is to provide the CBA an opportunity to approve the modifications to the proposed regulatory text in CCR Title 16, Sections 54.3 and 54.4, approve the staff recommended response to any written comments the CBA receives during the 15-day comment period that are not specifically directed at the most recent modifications to the proposed regulations, and adopt the proposed modified regulatory text in CCR Title 16, Section 54.3 and 54.4, should no comments be received related to the proposed modified text. The CBA previously heard this item at its September 2022 and March 2023 meetings and approved proposed regulatory text to provide increased consumer protections regarding client notifications and maintaining the confidentiality of any client records that the licensee possesses when licensees are selling, transferring, or discontinuing practice. At its March 2023 meeting, the CBA directed staff to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking file, and on June 26th, the rulemaking package was submitted to the OAL for its review and approval. During OAL's review, they identified a clarity issue in proposed sections 54.3D and 54.4B. For Government Code Section 11349, clarity means written or displayed so that the meaning of regulations will be easily understood by those persons directly affected by them. Following discussions with OAL staff, the CBA elected to withdraw the rulemaking package on August 7th to allow for the opportunity to provide clarifying modifications to the proposed regulatory text for CCR sections 54.3 and 54.4. Based on OAL's feedback, staff recommends that the CBA approve modifications to the proposed regulations that can be found in the attachment as follows. The first one is regarding the client notification requirements outlined in the proposed text. The proposed modifications provide clarifications in section 54.3D and 54.4B that a notice returned to the licensee either by mail or electronic transmission would demonstrate that the attempt to contact the client was unsuccessful. The next modification is to eliminate the use of the term "its" throughout the regulatory text and instead use more specific language such as that client, the client, or their to provide further clarity and improve readability. Given substantive modifications are being proposed to the regulatory text, following the 45-day public comment period, an additional public comment period of 15 days is necessary to ensure that the public is provided an opportunity to provide comments that are related to these modifications. For any comments received during the 15-day comment period that are not specifically directed to the most recent modifications to the proposed text, CBA staff proposes the following response be used in the final statement of reasons. The CBA has reviewed and considered the comment and declines to make any amendments to the proposed text based thereon. Comment is not specifically directed at the most recent modifications to the proposed regulations. If, during the 15-day comment period, substantive comments are received that are specifically directed at the most recent modifications, the CBA will need to schedule and hold a special meeting to consider those public comments. A rulemaking agency must transmit a rulemaking action to OAL for review within 1 year from the date that the notice was published in the California Regulatory Notice Register. The notice for this rulemaking was published on November 18th, 2022. Holding a special meeting would allow sufficient time for the CBA staff to resubmit the rulemaking file to OAL by that 1-year deadline. Staff recommend that the CBA approve the motion, which can be found on page 4 of the agenda item under recommendation. At this time, I'd like to turn this discussion back over to President Salazar and would be happy to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you very much, Ms. O'Connor. We have a question, Mr. Jacobson, or a comment?
Thank you very much. I have noticed 3 areas where I think that clarity is not so clear. What is meant by the phrase "not subject to" in 54.3C? You see that? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
Actually, I'd like to ask Mr. Francella to comment.
And I think Mr. Savoy has pointed it out, but not every client or the entire book of business might be sold as part of a particular transaction, so that those clients would not be subject to the sale or the transfer of that firm.
I don't think that's clear. I think that requires the explanations that you all have given, I would suggest something like, with respect to client records of an objecting client, the selling licensee shall return all client records to said objecting client, and then without delay or as agreed upon with the client. And of course, what would be agreed upon would be that which is part of the sale.
That portion is not necessarily, isn't related to an objection. It is to be inclusive of all kinds of transactions. A sale could be only for a real estate book of business, or it could be for a tax book of business, but not an advisory book of business. And so it's simply just to add that flexibility in. And so I believe that is the intent, that the licensees that are in the deal are the ones that are able to use this information to respond accordingly.
Then I think that should be in there. Something like that are papers that are documents that are subject to portions of the sale, or something like that. Not subject to could be interpreted as different things, and it invites potential problems like potential litigation.
So I'd like to call on Deanne Pierce.
If I could just maybe jump in. So the Office of Administrative Law is kind of the end all be all with our regulations. And so that's kind of their role, is to make sure that the regulations that go to them have met these various standards. And one of the standards that they found an issue with was clarity in those specific those specific sections that Ms. O'Connor identified. They've actually, the attorney assigned and the attorneys that review all these have actually gone through all of these regulations already. And the only areas they found exception with on the clarity issue were those that were making modifications to. So I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that from OAL's perspective, they haven't found a clarity issue with those. And so that's not necessarily the ones that they're kicking it back to us for. And so everything else has met the clarity standard, the non-duplication, all those other standards. And so I just wanted to address that from a legal concern, that they have already done that review part.
I understand
So,
that.
okay.
It's A and D, or B and D rather.
May I attempt, I think it's a valid point that someone could interpret it or be unsure what to do. We also have our structure that we have to sort of conform to in terms of the language that is in use. Could staff maybe note this as a communications idea or a topic to maybe put some clarity on the website, or when this passes, push out some information through social media? And would that be an acceptable way to enhance the understanding of those subject to any new rules and also sort of comply with our structure? Does that sound like a combination approach that would be reasonable?
I think it would be reasonable. I know that when I'm looking up regulations, I just look up the regulation. And I don't look at, I may look at something that's an annotation of the regulation. And if something like that can be put as an annotation, a comment underneath the regulation, I think that would be helpful. Not subject to comment of the CBA, not subject to means.
Right.
So, and in the best wording that you have as a secondary process, perhaps something on social media, but I think it still invites litigation that would probably be resolved by the comment on the website and so forth.
So that would require a reboot of this to make any amendments at this point. That is my only comment, that the clarification would be a reset, I think, of our timeline on this movement. Ms. Pierce and then Ms. Hines.
So the revised language based on OAL's concerns that they identified, they kind of said, fix this and we can move forward. And so based on their direction, we kind of came up with this language. And if I recall correctly, I think OAL's actually even looked at the proposed changes and said, yes, this is a fix, but it has to be approved by the board and the notice for 15 days for public comment. So if we make changes beyond this, then I think that it could raise other issues by OAL. And I think we're going to be hitting an issue with hitting our 1-year deadline with OAL. As a suggestion, in addition to the excellent idea by President Salazar, we could also look at this as possibly a cleanup package, a secondary one where we kind of come back through and see if there's any enhancements that perhaps could be made, going forward in addition to the outreach, or seeing if there's any concern after the regulations are approved. If we get kind of an influx of, concerns or feedback from our stakeholders, this isn't clear, it's not understandable, we could maybe provide that information back to the board and then kind of, see if there is an additional change that needs to move forward with the actual regulations itself.
That's important. Both of those points I think are well taken. And I note that the comment period, during the comment period, the commenters are invited to comment on the entirety of the regulations and not just the specific changes.
I'm sorry, may I respond to that, President Salazar? The comments are focused on those modifications, we aren't opening up the entire regulation portion again. So any comments would have to be focused on what the board is changing for the modifications today.
I misunderstood. So if I like the cleanup idea, and the putting something on the website, an asterisk or something that would help. And if perhaps staff could work on that, I think would be a good idea.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Ms. Hines, you have been incredibly patient. Thank you.
Thank you. With all due respect to my colleague, Mr. Jacobson, his is but one of many opinions in this body. And so I would suggest that before taking any additional action about making modifications to what has been proposed, you might present it to the rest of the board to determine whether or not you have a majority of board members who share Mr. Jacobson's concerns about the comments. If there are not, then we can proceed with addressing the taking action as has been recommended by staff. I do have another comment about something else, but it's separate. So I just wanted to make that one first.
Much appreciated. Would you like to proceed with your next comment? And, at any point, we are able to take a motion. I mean, that it is not closed to taking motion. So I do want to point that out. But Ms. Hines?
Question was related to the operation of the notice process, because there is concern about us making sure that this is completed within that 1-year timeline. So if we were to have to schedule an emergency meeting because there were some comments that were received based upon changes, would that meeting have to be in person? Or, okay, that was going to be my question, was like, how would we go about having a meeting if there were to be some changes made?
Could it be done by mail?
Mr. Franzella, can you comment on procedure?
We would work with members to find a date that would work for everybody, but it can be handled via teleconference. There will need to be an office location with a member there. We can probably accommodate that in Sacramento, obviously. And then members would be able to participate remotely. We'll go through the proper, obviously, Bagley-Keene issues, but for this one issue, if it were to come up, we'd be able to do it remotely.
So following Carrie Ann's idea, may I ask, Katrina, if there's anyone who's opposed to staff working on the issues that you identified? And
I do think I would prefer to call for a motion, and we just need a motion on the floor. Ms. Hines?
I'd like to move that we adopt the staff's recommendations that are presented regarding the approval of the modifications and the instructions to staff on the next steps that need to be taken as presented on page 4 of the report.
Okay, so we do have a first. We do need a second before we can continue. And Ms. Ward, I think you won by a fraction.
I will second the motion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have a first from Hines. We have a second from Ms. Ward, and we can take board member comments. Mr. Jacobson.
yes, I have another point that of clarity, and I realize that this, I don't want it to be re-kicked, and I don't want it to be in litigation. I want it to be clear. That's all.
Certainly.
And in B, which is one of the sections, 54.3B, which is one of the sections that were by which this was kicked back. In the second, well, it says after the comma in the first line, the licensee shall return any client's records without delay. I think that for clarity's sake, after any words that were suggested by the administrative law folks should be included, and that's any of that client's records.
Thank you for that comment. I think that, my comment I would throw out is this has been subject to public comments, I believe, previously. It's been just the edits are sort of our refocus. So at least myself hearing your consideration for it, I do at least feel as a board member some comfort that we have exposed this words, we have had the appropriate comment period, and so for me that gives me a lot of comfort that we can, at least for myself, move forward with this motion. So we have a first, we have a second. Any additional comments?
Right.
Mr. Jacobson.
Can we include in this motion, if it's a motion that you want, that and of course this is presented to president and to the maker of the motion, that staff work on the ideas that you had and Deanne also had.
Ms. Hines.
With all due respect, Mr. Jacobson, I do not accept your friendly amendment.
Yes.
So,
and I was going to say the one thing I've learned from some of our prior meetings is that when we do have a motion on the table, I would like it to be voted up or down. If it fails, then we will open up and entertain revised motions. And that is, for me, sitting up here has just made it a lot easier to keep track of what is happening. So at this point, we do have a motion with a first and a second on the floor that I would like to take action on. If any concerns or comments have been aired, I believe they have. So we have the motion, which is the recommendation, is to accept the recommendation provided by staff as written in the materials on page 4 of this agenda item. Correct? All right, thank you very much. So with that, I would like to move on to public comment here in Pomona. And seeing no public comment here in Pomona, I would like to invite our WebEx moderator to please open up the online website for the Q&A for discussion on this agenda item. We are currently on agenda item number 12.
Moderator, the Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen for your reference. If you would like to participate, click the question mark inside of the square, type comment, and send it to all panelists. If you called in, you can press *3 from your phone to raise your virtual hand. No requests at this time. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes, moderator, please close the Q&A. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Reed to please call for the vote for the motion on the table.
Christian Lauder? Yes. Tony Lynn?
Yes.
Katrina Salazar?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
Evangeline Ward?
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
And Dan Jacobson?
No.
The motion carries.
All right. Thank you for that. Moving along to, I'm sorry, Mr. Jacobson.
So I have a motion, and I'd like to see if it gets a second.
Certainly.
I would like to move that that we direct staff to follow up on the issues and that Deanne and the president suggested regarding 54.3C and the phrase not subject to.
Okay, so we have a first on the floor, and do we have a second?
May I disguise my voice?
Absent a second, it's going to pass. I will, so I think the motion fails is technically the right word. Now that motion is off the table and is closed, I will say, Mr. Jacobson, in response to your concerns, I do believe that these are things that fall under the regular work our staff does. They look for opportunities always to communicate on clarity, and they're now aware of this issue, and we always look for cleanup based upon responses and concerns. So I would say a motion actually wasn't maybe even necessary because we've got a great staff, and I appreciate that, the sentiments that you shared. All right, so we move along to item number 13, which are our meeting minutes. And I'm going to request that we take these agenda items in two separate motions. So the first motion I'm requesting is specific to the Board of Accountancy minutes. And I'm asking for a motion to adopt the minutes of the July 27th, 28th, 2023 CBA meeting, specifically agenda item 13A, which does include non-substantive edits noted after the materials were received. Yes, Ms. Hines, comment?
Require council to weigh in. Members who may not have been present at the meetings are allowed to vote on the motion to adopt the meeting minutes. Is that right? Because you're just voting on accepting the minutes, not voting on.
We are specifically voting to adopt the board minutes. The attendance requirements is not there for the committee minutes because those we accept.
But I'm asking members who were not present at the July Board of Accountancy meeting are allowed to vote on them to adopt the minutes. Just want to be clear, as opposed to having to abstain because they were not present. Just want to be
comment, Mr. Franzella.
I don't see any issue. I know you were there on Thursday, and so no, I don't see a problem with your.
All right, thank you.
And now I'd like clarification. So if you attended any part and were absent for any portion, it is still appropriate to vote. If you were not in attendance at all, would it be correct to abstain?
Madam President, I'm happy to chime in on this if you'd like.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. I appreciate the clarification.
Sure. So there's nothing prohibiting members from voting to approve the minutes. That said, individual members may choose on their own to abstain from the vote for reasons that they may have. That may include because they weren't in attendance, but there's no prohibition here on any vote for this.
Mr. Payne, thank you so much for that clarification. I really appreciate it. And Ms. Hines, it's a great question. So thank you. So with that, we are looking for a motion to adopt the minutes of the July CBA meeting. Thank you, Ms. Hines, and I'm looking for a second. Ms. Corrigan?
I second that motion.
Fantastic. First from Hines, second from Corrigan. Any member comments? Seeing none, I would like to invite public comment in Pomona. And seeing none, I would like to ask our WebEx moderator to please open up the online Q&A for public comment on agenda item 13A.
The moderator, the Q&A is open. The instructions will be on the screen shortly. If you would like to participate, click on the question mark inside of the square, type comments, send it to all panelists. For those who are calling in, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 to raise your hand. I see no requests at this time. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes, moderator, please close the Q&A, and I'd like to invite Ms. Reed to please call for the vote.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Evangeline Ward,
Yes.
Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Christian Latta,
Abstain.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
and Nancy Corrigan.
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right, thank you very much for that. We're now moving along to a request for a motion to accept the minutes, specifically agenda items 13B and 13C, which are our qualifications committee meeting minutes and the peer review oversight committee meeting minutes. These do include non-substantive edits that were noted after the materials were received. May I have a motion to accept both of the minutes? Ms. Ward?
I move to accept I'd like to make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from July 27th.
Okay, we have a first from Ms. Ward. Thank you for that motion. And Mr. Jacobson?
I second that motion.
All right, thank you very much for that. Board member comments? Seeing none, I'd like to invite public comment here in Pomona. And seeing none, I'd like to invite our WebEx moderator to please open up the online Q&A for public comment on agenda items 13B and C.
Q&A open. Instructions are on the screen. If you're logged in, press that question mark, type comments, send it to all panelists. If you called in, press *3 to raise your virtual hand. No requests. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes, moderator, please close the Q&A. All right, I'd like to invite Ms. Reed to please call for the vote.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Christian Latta,
Yes.
Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
and Evangeline Ward.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you for that, Ms. Reed. I appreciate that. Moving along to agenda item number 14, under the report on the meetings of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants attended by our board member representatives. I do have a very brief report on the Board of Examiners. I will share with you that I did participate in the August 24th virtual meeting. As you would expect, the BOE, which is the Board of Examiners acronym, spent at this meeting a significant amount of time looking at the exam sections, sitting, passing rates. Ms. Latta, do you have a question?
I believe Ms. Ward's motion was, she explicitly stated the July minutes, so I don't think we approved the May minutes or the peer review oversight committee.
We combined them.
I understand, but when she said the motion, she did explicitly state only July. So I don't know if that matters.
That is a great point of order. Do we need to specify that? Do we have a valid motion as presented is the only question. That might be a Mr. Payne
Hi,
question.
good morning again. Yes, so on this as read is what the motion is. So what another option could be is to reread the motion and have the first and the second for that motion, if that helps. So if the motion as first and seconded would be the July and May meeting minutes, then it could be read as such.
So thank you, Mr. Payne, for that clarification. I did not hear, did not hear that the motion was for a single date. So we are going to be thorough and we are going to be very detailed. So at this point, I would like to go backwards to 13 and let's simply cover our bases. And I am requesting a new motion, which will be to accept the minutes for agenda item 13C, which is the May 12th, 2023 Peer Review Oversight Committee meeting minutes. Do I have a first? Ms. Hines? Okay, we have a first. Ms. Ward?
I move, and I apologize for the first mistake. Yes. Sorry. I will second that.
Sometimes I forget to have us vote. It takes all of us. So, okay, so we have a first from Hines, we have a second from Ward, and this is for the May 12th, 2023 Peer Review Oversight Committee meeting minutes. And seeing no hands up, no comments from our board, I would like to invite public comment here in Pomona. And seeing no public comment here in Pomona, I'd like to invite the WebEx moderator to please open up the online portal for comments, again, on item 13C.
The moderator, the Q&A is now open. The instructions will be on the screen shortly. If you would like to participate, click the question mark inside of the square, type comments, send to all panelists, or press *3 to raise your virtual hand if you're calling in. At this time, I see no requests. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes, moderator, please close the Q&A. And with that, I'd like to invite Ms. Reed to please call for the vote.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines. Dan Jacobson.
Yes.
Christian Lauda. Tony Lynn.
Yes.
Katrina Salazar.
Yes.
Michael Savoy.
Yes.
Evangeline Ward.
Yes.
And Nancy Corrigan. The motion carries.
Fantastic. So moving back to the BOE, I would just share with you the AICPA and this Board of Examiners is continuing to spend a lot of time looking at candidate testing, who is testing where, and they're really focused on the pipeline. They are seeing a little bit of a surge in applicants, which is what is sort of traditional right before an exam is changed. And so they continue to be very thoughtful and watch pipeline, and they're also quite focused on readiness and communication and all of the things that need to happen with candidates in order to be prepared for CPA Evolution, the actual launch in January of 2024. So I'm just pleased to report that that organization continues to be very focused on those issues. Moving along to, yes, Ms. Hines?
Are there any other trends regarding examinations in other jurisdictions that we should be aware of? And you may not have any right now, you may come up, later, but just any perspective on that.
So the data that's presented at these meetings is always aggregated at a national level. So what you will see in terms of exam statistics is from our own board, which will be highlighting our California exams as well as the national. So it's even more detailed than what we receive as board members, but it is all aggregated. So it is not state specific. Under NASBA, the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy, I would just add a small comment and then invite Ms. Corrigan to move through her comments on her committees. But in terms of the NASBA board, as a director at large, what I would just remind our board members is that you should have received an invitation to a webinar. And so if you missed it, it's not too late, but there was a webinar on Credit Relief Initiative. So there is information about that program. There were 2 events held earlier this month on the 7th and the 11th. And if you are interested in seeing that presentation. It has been recorded and is now available to board members to access through NASBA. So I just wanted to highlight that as there is a lot happening with pipeline and CPA evolution. And so that may be of interest to you. So I'd like to invite Ms. Corrigan to comment on her NASBA activities.
Thank you, President Salazar. So I'll be covering basically 14B2 and 14B3B as NASBA's Pacific Regional Director. So on August 16th, I virtually attended a Guam Board of Accountancy meeting. As you know, we make ourselves available. Actually, on that committee of member board relations, try to be available at least once every 3 years for the jurisdictions within a region. And so finally, I was able to arrange that with Guam and just covered some general topics and, of course, extended help that they might need from NASBA. I also, on August 25th, I met here at Cal Poly. NASBA CPT President Alfonso Alexander came from Tennessee. We met with Cal Poly's department chair, accounting department chair, and the dean of the College of Business Administration. And they are establishing a CPT student chapter to be effective this spring. So that's very monumental for NASBA. During August and September, I attended all regions' Zoom meetings in addition to holding my own Pacific Regional call on the 28th, and various topics were discussed. Jurisdictions are in the process of rewriting legislation or regulations to be consistent with NASBA. Some are having issues with testing centers, given that we're coming into year end and then starting the new exam in January. Alaska in particular, that is not a Prometric testing center, so there's little flexibility versus Prometric being very flexible with various jurisdictions. California presented, among other things, the Sure CPA project, so that's excellent and wonderful accomplishment in addition to all the outreach events and the fact the importance of holding board meetings at campuses, which we are doing now. We talked about removing barriers to licensing while maintaining consistency as much as possible between jurisdictions. More jurisdictions are adopting the 120 hours to sit provision, in addition to either adopting or already have moved toward the 30-month and in some cases 36-month conditional credit carryover position. So the Committee on Relations with Member Boards will be having an upcoming meeting to develop our questions. You know, at each board meeting, the NASBA leaders will sit with our committee and we can pose questions directly to them. So we're trying to formulate those questions right now. During the Pacific Region conference call, I shared a memo on their Prometric testing centers and what they are doing to accommodate the flood of candidates that are expected by year, and those candidates trying to get the exam under their belt before they transition into having to take it under the new format. So Prometric is doing all kinds of things, forecasting demand, looking at it by region, by zip code, trying to accommodate, delaying facility refurbishments so that centers are all ready to go. And they've assigned dedicated analysts and people to monitor everything and stay in close touch with NASBA along the way, mapping out board processing times and just trying to have a real handle on what they're expecting by December 31st. So NASBA's hoping to have Prometric be flexible enough to hold only CPA exam testing as it gets near the end. And so that would be a wonderful accomplishment as well. And they've started also a student candidate communication campaign. Get in there, get signed up, and get the exam behind you. But at the same time, trying to judge what the demand is going to be. So that's always difficult. As far as this report, just a few reminders that the focus question responses are due October 13th. I know that's coming up on our agenda shortly. The annual meeting for NASBA is October 29th to November 1st in New York City. And so I know registrations are taking place on that. The Executive Director Legal Conference is March 25th through 27th, and that's in Nashville, Tennessee. And the next regional meeting, when there is a Western and an Eastern, will be during June 2024. Of course, that exact timing and location is yet to be determined. So that's that part of my report. The next would be 14B3A, Education Committee. And we've talked about the Experience, Learn, and Earn program, or ELE. It is a pilot program and currently ready to launch with Tulane University, and that will begin in January. And as a part of that, an exposure draft is being released for consideration by colleges and universities that might also want to participate in that program. Prior to that, the Education Committee for NASBA and the Education Committee for AICPA, along with State Society Executive Directors, there's a working group that was established in connection with this program. We will be looking at that exposure draft and providing comments back. And so I now have a meeting next week for my Education Committee to do that, and I'll be able to report back next time. That concludes my report, and I turn it back to you, President Salazar.
All right, thank you very much for that, all that information. So that actually is the sum of the reports for the AICPA and the NASBA. Are there any member questions or comments about those agenda items that we have just covered? What I will do is I will wait for public comment and take it at the very end of agenda item number 14. We'll take all of the those items at one point in time. And so we're now moving along, and we are now at 14.4, which is discussion and approval of staff responses to the NASBA, National Association of State Boards of Accountancies, focus questions. Ms. Reed?
The purpose of this agenda item is to provide the CBA with staff proposed responses to the NASBA focus questions. The responses assist the NASBA regional directors with staying apprised of each state's policies and procedures and to see where improvements or adjustments might be made. The CBA may make a motion to approve the attached focus questions or direct staff to make any changes prior to submitting the responses to NASBA. At this time, I would like to turn it back over to President Salazar and would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Reed. Board members, comments? So I have one. Can we mention under the question that says, what is your board doing to promote the CPA designation? I'm pretty excited that we are meeting at a college campus and holding our board meeting here and have combined outreach events. Might we add maybe a sentence or two just outlining what we have just concluded here? Because I think that the ability to meet with students and faculty members is value added to maybe this question. So I don't need to review it or need to edit it, but if something could just be thrown in, that would be great. Any other, Ms. Lata?
Thank you, President Salazar. For the question under CPA exam, the third question down, is your board communicating directly with exam candidates regarding the new uniform CPA exam, or are you relying on communication for NASBA AICPA? We did note a yes, but our staff and outreach department are doing a really great job at communicating, so I thought it'd be nice to add a description or just a brief explanation.
It's funny when you read it, I now realize it's an or, and we answered yes. Are we communicating or are you relying? Yeah, maybe in the comments we could just say, maybe just add some clarity of what we do, because actually checking a box yes is a little confusing.
The survey one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a little challenging on these.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I think with Ms. Lata's suggestion, we will definitely have that clarity. Ms. Corrigan.
The responses that the regions, as Ms. Pierce mentioned, accumulate, and NASBA takes them and summarizes them. So then at the annual meeting, when we hold the regional breakouts, we have these. And then, as Ms. Lata mentioned, it's very important that is also a time that will be discussed and detailed. And other jurisdictions may ask, well, how are you doing that? Or what do you do? And then we can say, California's been kind of ahead of the pack really in doing that kind of thing. And other jurisdictions are starting to do it more so and seeing the need and the importance of doing it. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, these responses are, to echo Ms. Corrigan's comment, these are read and used. So I think the more we can talk about the great things we're doing, maybe the more we can model what some of the practices that other states may be interested in.
I want to echo Ms. Corrigan's sentiment that as the largest jurisdiction, other states do really look to us for guidance and ways to implement things. So I think us expressing explicitly how we're approaching the communication with the students, which we do a great job at, would be very valuable. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that comment, Ms. Lata. And I do think it's helpful to have it in writing at the board meeting, so the timing worked out great. And thank you, Ms. Reed, for getting this information together so we could add our thoughts. So with that, I would, as promised, like to go back and handle the public comment on agenda item 14. Is there any public comment here in Pomona? And seeing no public comment here in Pomona, I would like to ask our WebEx moderator to please open up the...
This is the moderator. The Q&A is now open. The instructions are on the screen, or will be on the screen for your reference. If you would like to participate, please click on the question mark inside of the square, type comment, send it to all panelists. If you called in, you can press *3 to raise your virtual hand. No request. Would you like me to close the Q&A? And I'm getting no audio from the conference room.
Yes. Thank you. You may close the Q&A. And this is actually an agenda item which we just covered, 14.4, which does require a motion. And so we are looking for a motion to approve the substance of the items that we just provided staff direction on. So we need a motion to approve 14B4. Okay.
Motion to approve.
All right. We have a first from Mr. Savoy, Mr. Jacobson.
I second that. That includes comments that you had made for suggestions.
Yes, my motion does include any substantive changes or things we've talked about.
Okay. So we have agreement. We have a motion with a first and a second for this agenda item, and additional board comments. Hearing none, comment here in Pomona. Seeing none, I'd like to invite the WebEx coordinator. Please open up for public comment on agenda item 14B. We do have a motion on the floor. Thank you.
Q&A is now open. Instructions are on the screen. If you would like to participate, click the question mark, type comments, send to all panelists, or *3 from your phone to raise your hand. No requests. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes, moderator, please close. And I would like to turn it over to Ms. Reed to please call for the vote.
Nancy Corrigan? Yes. Carrie Ann Farrell Hines? Yes. Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Christian Lauda? Tony Lynn?
Yes.
Katrina Salazar?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
And Evangeline Ward?
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right, thank you very much. So we are now moving on to 15 as on our agenda, which is our closing business. So I would like to invite comments on any agenda items for future California board meetings. And I would like to start with our board members. If so, please raise your hand. Okay. We have no board member future comments on future agenda items. I will now go ahead and open for public comment. And are there any members of the public here in Pomona that would like to add future board agenda items for consideration? And seeing none, I'd like to invite our WebEx moderator to please open up the online Q&A for closing business.
The Q&A on the question mark inside of the square, type comments, send it to all panelists. Or if you called in, press *3 to raise your virtual hand. No requests. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes, moderator, please close the Q&A. All right, so wonderful. So with that, that concludes the meeting of our September 22nd Board of Accountancy. I would like to thank everyone for being here. Travel safe, be well, and the meeting is adjourned.